going to we are going to get started. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we're going to get started by introducing ourselves. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ida Guragan. I am the Director of Leadership Programs at the Henry Luce Foundation, and one of the programs I oversee is the Luce Scholars Program, which you're all here to learn more about today. And I want my colleague also to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I am Michelle Duenas. I am Senior Program Manager for Luce Scholars. I handle the day-to-day of the Luce Scholars, as well as the competition.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. So welcome, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. To give you an overview of the hour, we're going to briefly discuss the program for those of you who might be unfamiliar with it. We're going to discuss the application process and the different components of the application. We will then, towards the end, hear from a Luce alum who will give you a bit of a sense of his own experience, both during the application, but also during his Luce year. And then we're going to leave about 10 minutes for Q&A. And as you all pointed out, the chat is disabled, but Q&A is open. So please feel free to drop your questions either as we're speaking or towards the end, whatever you feel more comfortable with. We are going to try to address as many of these questions as possible. If for some reason your question goes unanswered, please feel free to either email one of us or to email the alias that you will have is on the website, but you will also have towards the end of this presentation. So we will work to answer your questions during the entire time, but also in that last minute session. So a little bit about the Luce Scholars Program for those of you who might be unfamiliar with it. This is a 13-month experiential and leadership program that places individuals in professional capacities across Asia. The scholars receive intensive language training. They receive curated professional development activities that are really geared toward the entire cohort, but also the individual scholar as well. And we train emerging global leaders in all sectors and from all disciplines. This is a question we often receive. Whatever you have studied as an undergraduate, wherever you might be working now, everyone is welcome and encouraged to apply. We are very eager to cultivate as diverse a cohort as possible, and we mean that in the utmost possible sense, from thinking about race and gender to geography, to work, to age range. So really thinking broadly about what we mean by diversity. So we really encourage everyone from different disciplines, especially to apply. So what does it mean to become a Luce Scholar? What is the goal of the program, and what is it that we hope Luce Scholars will achieve and will develop over the course of their Luce year and beyond? So one of the first things is that we are keen to develop compassionate leaders, the next generation of leaders, and individuals who want to work collaboratively on a global stage. This is an opportunity for Luce Scholars, for all of you, to begin to envision and realize your potential for social impact. And finally, thinking beyond yourself and beyond your own leadership skills, being placed in Asia also gives you this unique opportunity to really forge strong relationships across geographic borders in obviously a different part of the world, and to acquire in the meantime a nuanced understanding of the countries, cultures, and the peoples of Asia. And this is not just to the country or the community that you would be placed in, but as Michelle will speak to briefly, we also host several in-person meetings throughout the year. And so it becomes an opportunity to explore and to really immerse yourself in different countries, even if you are not placed there as a Luce Scholar. And finally, there are 800 plus, I believe, Luce alumni at this point. So you are joining a very robust and engaged alumni network that will be there to foster and cultivate relationships with, but that you will also be encouraged to develop these relationships with from the moment you are selected till well after the end of your Luce year. And one of the trademark components of the Luce Scholars Program is this leadership and professional development program. We run, and you can see from this image here, one of the programs that was run during the wrap up, which is the end of the year meeting that takes place. And this happened to be in Bali, where we do facilitated workshops to really focus on reflective leadership. We do workshops on public speaking, on storytelling, on grant writing, more broad professional development workshops that really touch upon those areas that you all might be interested in, and also executive coaching. So you have somebody sitting with you at least 3 to 4 times from the moment of selection to the end of your Luce year to really talk to and think through what your plans might be for the future, the areas in which you might want to better cultivate some strengths and better cultivate some skill sets, and also the ways in which you can think about yourself as this global leader, so that once you are done with your Luce year, you are in the best possible position to take that next step. And I'm going to pass it on to Michelle.
Okay, so I will talk a little bit about professional placements. Professional placements is the most unique feature of the Luce Scholars Program. We don't work with a set group of organizations across Asia. Instead, we tailor the placement to the individual scholar's interests. Placements are made possible in 19 different countries and regions in Asia and Southeast Asia. The list is here of the countries, all the way from Mongolia down to Timor-Leste. These are some examples of past placements, but as I said before, the placements are individually tailored to the scholar's interests, so we don't repeat placements, and again, we don't work with a set group of organizations across Asia. So I thought I'd talk just briefly about a few of our past placements. Here are some photos. The first one I'll talk about is CJ Stanfill. He was a Luce Scholar in 2011. He was placed at World Education Laos, and his placement was set to develop educational programs for survivors of unexploded ordnances. And if you know anything about Laos, unexploded ordnance accidents happen all the time. And CJ realized during his Luce year that not only are there a number of these victims, but that the terrain in Laos is very difficult to navigate in a wheelchair. And so he saw a problem, and he decided that he would design an all-terrain wheelchair, which is not pictured here, but he did later on his Luce year. So he stepped in and solved that problem. The next photo is Laura Marsalek. I included Laura here. She was placed at the Marangar Museum Trust in Jodhpur, India. The museum is built into a beautiful mountain, and Laura, unlike most Luce Scholars, decided that the best option for her would be to live at the museum. They do offer artists in residence, and she opted for that. You see her here in her studio, which is also her residence, working on her jewelry. After Luce, Laura went on. She is currently working at Sotheby's as a research assistant. Here on the left is Sam Campbell, a Luce Scholar from 2019. Sam's year ended when COVID began, and here you'll see him during COVID wearing his mask at a conference, talking about his work on wildlife conservation. Sam did a homestay, which is not common, but occasionally scholars opt to do a homestay. Most times we recommend that scholars that want to do a homestay do it for the first 2 months when they were in their intensive language course. Sam loved it so much that he opted to stay with his homestay family for the entire year. He stayed on in Hanoi, was offered a job working in wildlife trafficking at Wildlife Traps. He stayed on for an additional 2 years and just returned summer of 22, and he is now getting a master's in environmental management at the University of Virginia. On the right is Alex McDougall. She was a scholar in 2016, placed in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Here she's pictured working on her archaeology dig. Alex left the Luce and started working with 400 years of African American history as a research assistant, and then came to the Luce Foundation and worked with us for a year on this Luce Scholars Program as a presidential fellow. Here on the left is Jonathan Villela. He was a Luce Scholar at the very end of COVID in 2021. He was placed at the College of Music in Mahidol University. You'll see him here conducting at a performance that he designed during his music education. He was offered the chance to work with a professional group of musicians, and he thought it would be a wonderful idea to bring the students that he was teaching at Mahidol together with the Thai Philharmonic Orchestra that he also worked with. He brought the two together, and here he is at that performance. And on the last photo is Melia Wong, a 2019 Luce Scholar working at the West Kowloon Cultural District. And I added this photo because I wanted you all to see that, yes, Luce Scholars do sometimes work in the field and do amazing things, but they also work in offices. And here is Melia on her last day with all of her colleagues that she became very close with, developed wonderful relationships with. And Melia is currently in London working at the Barbican Arts Center. So that's just a little bit so that you can get an idea of what sort of things our scholars do during their Luce year. In this next slide, I thought I'd talk a little bit about funding and resources. So the gross amount of the stipend is $32,000. That's the base stipend. There is an increased amount for countries with a higher cost of living. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan have a higher base, and then a country like Singapore has an even higher base. In addition to that base stipend, which covers a scholar's housing and food and entertainment, the Luce Foundation offers in the first stipend a $1,000. It's a discretionary amount. Scholars are offered that amount in the month before they depart for Asia. It can be used for anything. Scholars have used it to purchase a phone or luggage in preparation for their Luce Scholar year. You can also save it and use it for something that comes up during the Luce year. In addition to those, there is a professional development fund available to scholars of up to $1,000. That amount can be requested through a proposal to the Luce Foundation. It can be used for attending a conference, for an online course. It can be used for a research trip, or it can be used for a project of the scholar's own design. It can be requested in one lump sum or in smaller amounts for different purposes. In addition to those resources, scholars' airfare is covered to and from Asia and to all of our meetings. I'll talk a little bit later about the different meetings during the Luce year, but all airfare is covered. 2 months of intensive language training arranged for and paid for by the Luce program. Also, Luce scholars are insured They receive health insurance during the Luce year, not only for physical health, but also mental health coverage through the insurance, and also a separate mental health support. There is support for continued language during the year. So once a scholar completes their 2 months of intensive language, they can apply for additional funds for continuing language. And any scholar that is living outside of the capital city in their country can take 2 trips to that capital city, which is subsidized by the program, and all travel to renew visas is covered by the Luce Scholars Program. And here I just thought I'd give you a quick overview of the timeline. As you know, applications are due not on October 15th, as it says here, but October 16th. By November, we will notify you whether you are selected as a semifinalist. Semifinalists receive 2 virtual interviews. Then in December, we notify our finalists and invite them to a selection meeting, which takes place in San Diego in late January. The dates are on our website. It's January 18th through 20th. Then by late January, scholars have been selected, notified, contracts are signed. Then the months following are dedicated to one-on-one discussions to decide on placements. And by late June, our scholars all travel to Asia for an orientation meeting. That meeting takes place in Singapore. It's a short few days, and then the scholars depart for their respective countries and begin their 2 months of intensive language training. By September, early September, Luce Scholars start at their placements and can request those funds for continued language. In December, we all meet again at a location in Asia. This year it's Cambodia, for a mid-year meeting where we continue some of those leadership workshops that started at selection, continued at orientation, and go on to at this mid-year meeting, and then finally conclude with a wrap-up meeting in Asia. This year it will be in Mongolia in July. Aida, do you want to talk a little bit about the application process?
Sure. So a few things to consider. I'm not going to read through all of the eligibility requirements here. You can see them online, and you will also be prompted to complete an eligibility form before you start the application, so you don't go through the entire application if you are not qualified. But just some basic things. For the most part, it is open to young professionals. Remember, it's emerging leaders, 32 and under. If you're over 32, then if you received your bachelor's in the past 3 years, you are still eligible. We really try to encourage a better understanding of Asia among those individuals who have very little exposure to it. So you can see here our 18 weeks stipulation. If you have spent 18 weeks or more in a particular country, you are not disqualified, but you would not be placed in that country. We really want to make sure that you are getting exposure to different parts of the continent. 1 second, I believe my screen is going now. So sorry, everybody. Michelle just had to duck out. Oh, we're giving it away. Showing you without. Hi, YJ.
Hello.
I think Michelle went to go get you.
Okay.
But I will continue on until, oh, there she is. So Michelle, I'm sharing my screen now.
I apologize. I jumped back and I forgot that, of course.
Totally fine.
Okay.
So who should apply to this program? So here are some of the characteristics that we seek out, but also that you should ask of yourself. If these are things, these are the ways in which you would describe yourself or you think others might describe you. It is a wonderful year. It is just a remarkable experience. But we also want to make sure that you are going to be able to thrive and that this is the right fit for you. So if you have always been a curious person, particularly exploratory curiosity, right? Wandering, trying to learn things on your own. You are really keen to embrace different perspectives, beliefs, modes of living. You're adaptable. This can be a difficult year, right? Just as with anything else, once you are removed from home, wherever that is, there are going to be some challenges that you will have to overcome. And of course, the team is here, your cohort is here to support you. But ultimately, we also want to make sure that you are well equipped to address these challenges on your own. We want to make sure that the scholars are open-minded, that they do demonstrate humility. There is an understanding that once you are entering a community, you are entering a different workspace, a different country, you are aware that your knowledge is limited in comparison to those of the others. Even if you were doing the exact same work in the US that you might be doing at your placement, there are still differences there. There are contextual differences, and to really understand and to see yourself as a learner in this environment, as somebody who is placed to really absorb and learn all sorts, right? Not just professionally, but also culturally and socially. We're keen to identify people who have a collaborative spirit. This is not just for the purposes of the placement, but also for the cohort. We strive very much to build a sense of a cohort and a community of 18 scholars who are going to be there to support one another, potentially work with one another, and really ensure that they are in a good position to be able to do that. We are looking for individuals who, again, will be resilient, similar to the adaptability concept. And finally, that they have a commitment to supporting one another. And to serving application components. As I mentioned, there is an eligibility form. There's the basic application itself that, asks for the demographic data, for your address, for all of that. There is a personal statement that I'll speak briefly about. There are two short answer questions. We request 2 letters of recommendation. These don't have to be academic letters. If you have strong professional letters, that is absolutely fine. And remember, this academic program. So, they can definitely speak to your academic abilities. That would be fantastic. But we also want letters that are going to speak to your character. We asked for a transcript, but that transcript is used in a very limited capacity. We also asked for a 1 to 2 minute video that's based on a prompt. This really gives those individuals who might really flourish in using a different medium the opportunity to connect with their readers and with the interviewers. And if you are a writer or an artist and you want to submit something for a portfolio, some supplemental materials, you have the opportunity to do that as well. So for the personal statements, if you applied last year, just so you know, we did change it up a little bit, and hopefully to make this a little more direct and easier to navigate and to tell a story about yourself. So we are looking for a maximum 1,000 word statement that's going to give whoever reads that personal statement a window into your personal journey. So thinking about your long range personal and professional interests, how they have developed, and how this journey informs your vision and aspirations for making an impact in the world. I know that's a lot to pack into 1,000 words, but we really want you to think holistically in terms of your experiences thus far. Where have you been and where do you want to go? And think about this from this professional capacity and the extent to which the personal plays a part, incorporating that as well. There are also the two short answers. So the first is to really understand your role in a group and how you see yourself in a group dynamic. So it is, what is your superpower in a group? The second short answer, both of these, by the way, 250 words, are an opportunity for you to express why the Luce Scholars Program is right for you at this moment, and why, basically, why do you want to be in Asia? How is this going to contribute to your professional goals? And how is it going to play a part in you reaching and meeting those personal or the greater social impact goals that you have set for yourself? So there is also a video, as I mentioned, and with the okay from Tatiana, who is one of the scholars for this year, we are going to show you the video that she submitted. And so this gives you a sense of what again, there is no, please, in showing this, we're not suggesting there is a model or a way to approach this. What we do want to show is that these can really be varied. And even more importantly, that we do not want these edited using anything professional. As you can see, this was done, she did this using her phone. Really informal videos in that regard. We don't want to give somebody who has that background in video editing a leg up to those who might not, or to those who might not have the most recent equipment or anything. So really think about this again as an opportunity for your personality and for your interests to shine, not to demonstrate your skills as an editor.
In order for them to hear it, you have to share sound, which is one of the more buttons.
What's that, Michelle?
Go to more, the three dots on the bottom, and share sound.
Okay.
Yeah, I made that mistake last time and learned.
Thank you.
This is what we do on the weekends. This is my uncle. This is my uncle. He taught me how to dance salsa. And salsa is such an important part of my life and my community and my culture. And whenever we need a moment to just break free of the chaos of the world and remember where we're from and who we are, we come to spaces like this. You can see this beautiful crowd of people who are just dancing and enjoying the beauty of the Latin rhythm and of Puerto Rico and Afro-Latinidad. This is something that really matters to me, and I love bringing more people into the fold of this particular art form and culture. I hope that more people come to enjoy it. Salsa brings people together all around the world, and I've been able to witness it firsthand, and it's been something that's kept me grounded while I leave my home over and over and over again. So I'm very thankful for this space. I'm going to dance salsa for the rest of my life, and I'm going to get back to it right now and go back inside. Thank you all. Wepa.
So again, please, everybody, we don't need hundreds of videos of people dancing or of bringing in their uncles, but again, just a sense of how really diverse these videos can be, and seeing it as an opportunity for you to shine and to actually jump out of the page. So I want to pass it on now. Michelle, was there anything you wanted to add before I pass it on to YJ?
Just going back to the video, I think Aida mentioned this, but the technical quality of the video is something that we really don't care about. And that's one of the reasons that we selected Tatiana's video, because the lighting is horrible. The camera is shaky, but the message, the content is there. And I think that that's an important thing to just mention. That is what we're really interested in seeing. So again, when we say the technical quality is not important, we really do mean it, and that's one of the reasons that we showed that video. I'd like to welcome YJ to this conversation. YJ was Luce Scholar in 2009-10. He was placed in Hanoi, Vietnam. And YJ currently does a lot of TikToks on best practices for applying to programs like the Luce. He'll tell you a little bit about himself and what he has applied for and received. So I will hand it over to YJ just to give a little bit of advice on writing your personal statement and maybe some suggestions for the answers to the short answer questions. YJ? Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Okay. Uh, Thanks for having me on. I'm YJ. I have I was listening in earlier, and I just want to say the Luce Scholars Program will just take care of you. You don't need to worry about any of the logistics. I think that it was just an absolutely amazing experience, and if you'd have me back, I'd go back tomorrow. I was in Hanoi. I worked in a public health institute for the Vietnamese government. My Luce Scholars experience was amazing. I still speak to several of my classmates, and many of them have gone on to do quite amazing work. I've spent the last year in the entrepreneurial side, and every year I will get a number of students from my alumni network who will ask me questions. And I've always wanted to just share information about the programs because it changed the trajectory of my life in a positive way. And I think that you'll have this amazing opportunity and this amazing network from it. So I cannot stress how great the experience can be, but a lot of it is directed by your own your own desire to kind of move forward and push your career forward. So I think that one part that I want to focus on a lot right now is your personal statement. Your personal statement is an opportunity for the reviewers to kind of swim in your brain a little and get a sense of how you think about the world. And I wanted to say that, I've read a number of maybe hundreds of personal statements over the last decade. And I think that something that a lot of people do not necessarily realize is you have the opportunity to say a lot more than what the word count limits you to say, meaning there is underlying meaning to every sentence that you put in. And I need you to kind of consider that when you're putting your personal statement together. You have to be very careful in choosing the right wording to express whatever you're trying to express. The breakdown of the personal statement, I would kind of generalize to say that, there's maybe about 5 pieces. The first part is everything that has led up to college or what you're doing now in the last few year period. Then the second part is what you've been doing over the last few years. Then the third part is what a Luce experience might offer you to help you on to the fourth piece, which is what you're going to do soon after. And then the fifth piece is who will you become? Right. So when you are putting your personal statement together, the weightedness of each of these are different based on who you are and what content you provide. But you want to make sure that you kind of address each of those pieces to some degree. Some people have a very dramatic and interesting, background, and so they'll focus on that. Others have incredibly high aspirations and they'll focus on that. So it obviously depends on what your story is. The personal statement is this incredibly important mechanism to see and understand who you are as a person. So let the reader and the reviewer in. Don't be shy about revealing something that you may not say in a normal setting, right? You're here to share your strengths. You're here to share what kind of person you hope to become. You're here to kind of give us everything, right? So that would be my advice on the personal statement. I think that there's many components to an application, but that is the one thing that people will go to first to read through to get a holistic understanding of who you are. And it gives you an opportunity to address other things in your application that you might not think are are strengths. And then I think the Luce also has two separate short answers, and those short answers give you this opportunity to dive in a little bit further about why Luce, and the other one I believe is like a superpower that you have, right? So you want to be able to, this is like a deeper dive into a potentially smaller component of like what might be in your personal statement, but you want to, you want, if all factors are held equal and there are two identical candidates, and one could benefit more deeply from having this Luce experience in, whatever country, pick your country, then that justification can carry that applicant forward in a way that it won't the other. So this is a really good opportunity to try to figure out and determine why, some country in Asia, why this is actually going to help you grow as a person, why it's going to help you become a more effective leader, why you are going to be an important member of the cohort, what you bring to the table, not just what you're going to take from the program, right? Because they a big kind of component and a big part of the experience is, when I was on my Luce year, I was straight out of college. So I was surrounded by all these people who were a bit, not all of them, but many were a bit older. And so, they're trying to create a class that has some degree of cohesion and some degree of, I know they mentioned that you'll meet each other formally throughout the year, but some of you, if you are lucky enough, you'll get to visit throughout the year, which is something that I had done. So you'll take advantage of that, and even though you're separated in all these countries, there's this cohesion that is there, and there's this connection that you have with all these people in this group that is just absolutely amazing. So that's the short answer and the personal statement advice that I'd provide. I know that in the you have this other content that I've shared before, but I'll also kind of address a little bit of those if we have time. We have a little bit of time. Okay, so I think that it's really important that you submit your materials a little bit in advance. Don't just wait until the last day. Make sure 3 days before the application closes, you have everything set up. It is a shame if someone's recommender just forgets and drops the ball. So like, just make sure that 3 days before, this is all logistical, but it's really important, right? Because you could be the perfect applicant and not have submitted on time. It's important that you do. Then the other thing that you need to think about as well is interviewing. So, you are who you are. You can't really change who you are, but you can prepare yourself to as much, you have time to prepare yourself to be an effective person to interview. And that is something that, is a very important aspect of getting into the program. So I always advise everyone to practice interviewing aloud. Practice interviewing with somebody who's going to be highly critical of you, and share honest yet tight answers when you have the chance to interview. It's a highly stressful time, but it's also a really, oddly enough, it's a very fun time. At least it was for me. And so I think that people are really stressed out. They're a little high strung. Everyone is kind of on edge during those interview periods, and you have to like practice a little bit in order to feel acclimated to that discomfort, and that you want to normalize that discomfort for interview weekend. Then the other thing I usually recommend is I recommend people have many applicants have really interesting projects and programs, and they have the ability to showcase things. Now this could be a little bit different between the Luce and other national fellowships, but I always recommend people to have set up a personal site. There are free sites, there are paid sites. I do that because if you're in a position, where there is a seemingly identical candidate, you do want to stand out in the end. So I always recommend that. The other thing is, if you're asking questions and you're emailing questions into administrators or people related to the program, make sure you have read all the directions and materials beforehand. Most of your questions are answered, but specifics now are important to ask now, which is great. And so that would be what I would generally recommend. I think that it's just an absolutely amazing experience that I would have my fiance apply if we were not in our mid-30s. If we were in our mid-20s, I don't know. You're not doing that yet. I don't know if you're not doing, you're not going to give me a stipend if she gets in, right? If she were hypothetically mid-20s. Okay. But anyways, I would do it again if it were possible. Yeah. So yeah, I can understand it.
Great advice. Just a couple of other things that I would mention, and that YJ kind of mentioned this, don't forget to hit submit, and always request your letters of recommendation early. It's less than a month until deadline. If you haven't requested your recommendations, please do so. You have to give your recommenders time to fit that into their schedule. We will open it up to the Q&A. I see that we've got quite a number of questions. Before we do, let me just quickly mention the contact information. If you have questions that are not answered during this webinar, or if you think of something after the webinar, just write to us at lucescholars@hluce.org, or feel free to reach out via telephone. We will do our best to answer all questions. Let me jump into the Q&A. One question is in 3 parts. What is the difference between the 2 interviews for semifinals? How does selection week work? And finally, how competitive is the application? So
Michelle, can I just stop you right there? Do you want to just talk through from the start, once we receive the application, the readers, all of that?
Absolutely. So once we received applications, and last year our numbers increased, we received 364 applications. We are expecting to receive closer to 500. So to answer that last portion of the question, I think this will be an extremely competitive year. It always is, but
and for those of you who just to do that math for you, last year it was about 5% that we admitted as a Luce Scholar. So if that makes it easier to.
The first round of competition involves readers. Readers will be assigned to teams. There are 3 on a team. They will read your applications individually and rate and comment on those applications. They will then meet as a team to review the top 30% or anyone else that they think is worth discussing and should be considered to go on to the next round. Those comments from the teams come to our staff, and then we sit and determine from the whatever that number is of applications that come in, we determine the 50 that will move on in the competition as semifinalists. Semifinalists receive 2 virtual interviews with 2 different Luce alum. They're 30-minute interviews. And from those comments and ratings, our staff meets again and determines the 34 individuals that will be invited to our final selection meeting, which takes place January 18 to 20. It's a 2.5-day meeting in San Diego. This is where we begin our leadership workshops. There are icebreakers, there are panel discussions on the program itself and others with Luce alumni. And then from that meeting, and of course, at that meeting is also individual panel discussions. It's the individual candidate with 2 interviewers. So they are panel discussions, panels of 2. And from their comments and ratings, we determine 18 who are awarded the scholarship. And that occurs in late January. And then we go immediately into the discussions on placements once the contracts are signed. So I think that should answer those couple of questions on the process. Let me look for others. What is supposed to be put in the use this space to further elaborate on your field of professional interest box? So the question about field of professional interest is a drop down. And because it's a drop down, it's not very specific. And we do realize that a lot of people have interests and intersected between 2 different fields of professional interest. So especially if your field is not one of those in the drop down list, we ask that you just select one of those and then use the next question, which is an open text field, to be more specific about your particular field of professional interest. What qualities does a good video entry exemplify? So I'll take a stab at this and I'll let Aida answer if she wants to add something to it. But as you saw in the video that we exampled there, we don't care about technical quality. We really do want to know about an item or a place that is important to you and why it's important to you. And more than just how it's important to you, maybe how it involves or is important to you as you relate to your own identity, your community, your culture. I mean, think just like in the sample video where she talks about salsa, she also talks about how important it is to her community and her culture. And I think that's a pretty important part of a video. If you can identify that thing or place and talk about it in the smaller micro of why it's important, but also the bigger picture of why it is important to you and your culture and community, I think that makes for a really good video. Aida, would you add anything to that?
I mean, the one thing I would add, Michelle, is that I want you all to not worry about having a right answer for any of these things. There are some questions that I'm seeing that makes it seem like you all are concerned about what are we looking for? What is the right answer? There isn't a right answer. There is how you tell the story about yourself, what you're interested in, and what you want to do. And so in terms of the video, as Michelle said, it is identifying that object and identifying the place and tying it back into the larger application package, right? So really think about all of these different pieces as before anyone has met you, before the interviewers have met you, we have met you. How is it that you can put these different pieces together to give us an accurate depiction of who you are and why you should be selected as a Luce Scholar, right? As I mentioned early on, there isn't a singular type of person that we are looking for, that we identify a particular field. It really varies. And so in that same vein, these answers can really vary. And just keep that in mind as you are piecing this together. It is one part of a whole.
There is a question about the exact dates of the final selection meeting in San Diego. They are listed on our website. It's January 18 through 20. We do remind our candidates, even when we are just acknowledging their application, of those dates. It is a mandatory in-person meeting, so all candidates have to make sure that they are available for those dates. Can applicants state in there that they are open to more than one field? Yes, I would go back to that same answer that I was answering earlier, where you would just select one and then use that second text box to put in more information about your exact field of professional interest. And then the final question that we have, unless any more pop in, should we explain the items we list in the short application section? For example, if I write the name of a fellowship I did, should I write a sentence or two explaining purpose and involvement? Absolutely. Tell us whatever you can. If that's a text question, I can't remember if it's a text box, and if it is, yeah, feel free to talk about purpose and involvement. There is also a question on the application that says, tell us anything that we might not have asked. I can't remember the exact wording of it, but if there's anything else that you want to tell us about yourself. I always advise people, if there is an opportunity to tell us more about yourself, you should take advantage of it. So that could be a section that you use to complete that information on a prior fellowship that you did. So those are all the questions that we have. We just want to say thank you for attending. And again, if questions pop into your head and we haven't answered it, you can go to Luce Scholars at hluce.org and we will answer those. What are some examples? There's another question actually just popped in. What are some examples of ways to use the optional section? It's been used for so many different, in so many different ways. YJ, do you have any suggestions of how to use that? I mean, we've had people tell us things, especially, I'm thinking of maybe there is something on their transcript that they want to explain.
Yeah.
There might be something in their personal lives that they want us to know about that might not have been asked in any of the questions. They, the Luce program.
Yeah, I would say, I'm sorry.
I was going to
Go ahead.
say,
Yeah, I would say
travel sometimes. So a scholar who might have a responsibility to rush home and take care of a family member who doesn't have time to join clubs and things like that, who has to work full time all through 4 years of schooling. That's kind of what I would put in that. I don't know, YJ, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that in all potential areas where you can answer, I would lean on the side of adding depth, right? In the video, you want to offer more than what the time slot or the amount kind of allots. So in this case, yes, I think those are like really good examples, Michelle. I would also say that if you had an amazing project or program that just wasn't shared elsewhere, that kind of gives another dimension to your life, definitely you can share that there. I think the whole point is they want to have a comprehensive view of you, and this, the application is designed to kind of pull that from you. I think that are there minimum GPA requirements? Okay. I believe that some schools kind of may like recommend what those might be, but the GPAs vary from school to school. Now, I would say that I don't know if I'd qualify for a Luce now with my GPA from the past, but I would say that GPA is just one of those things where you care about it so much when you're in undergrad, And then after you graduate, a month after, you don't really think about it, outside of academia, I think. And, I wouldn't, if you have all these other interesting things going on and your GPA is slightly lower than you think it should be, that's not a reason to not apply. I think you need to take that chance.
So to answer that question, are there minimum GPA requirements? There are no GPA requirements for the Luce. And we only ask for transcripts to kind of get a sense of your trajectory to your chosen field of professional interest. If we see grades fall at a particular time, and the question asks what grades would be a red flag. That's really hard to say. I mean, if somebody really falters one semester, there's probably a reason. And if they want to tell us what the reason is, that's great. But it happens. We know it happens. And then we have another question that just popped in. Is there a place to add resume or supplemental materials in the application? There is a place to add supplemental materials. No need to add your resume if you are selected as a semifinalist. The system will generate an email to you, and you will have to go back into the application and add your resume and a short bio. So I think that should answer all the questions that we have. And we're just a minute over, and we want to respect everyone's time. So I just want to thank everyone for coming and joining us today and for these wonderful questions. YJ, thanks so much for all of your advice and guidance.
You're welcome.
Aida, do you have anything?
No, thank you everybody for joining us. Best of luck. You have our contact information. If you have any additional questions that we can answer, please feel free to reach out to us. We hope to receive applications from many of you well, as YJ pointed out, before October 16. I cannot stress that enough. Please, please do not try to upload something on October 16. Make sure everything is okay a few days in advance.
Absolutely. Especially video. Don't wait till the last minute, because I guarantee you others will wait till the last minute. And last year we had some people who I'm sure were sweating on the other end of get that video uploaded.
And for those of you who have started a new academic year, best of luck with the fall semester or quarter. So have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Okay.